What has actually changed at West Ham? It's been a couple of months of Lopetegui in charge now, and results haven't exactly been going to plan, which has led a lot of fans to ask, what's changed? Because on the field, sometimes it feels like David Moyes could still be in charge. So myself and smart person Jack Elderton have gone through the data to look at what's changed, what hasn't, and ultimately why that's left us in the position we're in now. So Jack, let's talk about the stylistic changes. Let's go through those, the big headline numbers.
Yeah, so first of all, I'll say, Charlie, you did help me with some of this, so I think this is two smart people, potentially, or two very silly people. We'll find out by the end of the video. But yeah, look, we need to ground this conversation in the attempted stylistic change for the club, right? So one of the main reasons that David Moyes was didn't have his contract renewed and we moved to Julen Lopetegui was because we wanted to progress to a more in inverted commas possession-based style from the club's perspective, probably more focused on controlling more of the variables, requiring less things or fewer things to fall into place from an attacking point of view of the few chances that we did generate on a regular basis through David Moyes' style, and therefore having a little bit more control generally over the course of a season and a higher chance of repeatably finishing in good positions in the table. I think that's the main reason we've shifted to this idea of trying to control the ball a little bit more, have more control of games with possession. And headline numbers wise, on the face of things, you see that there is some improvement in the possession numbers being recorded by the squad, which is would be expected, and it would be very disappointing if we hadn't recorded some improvement in this area. We were 17th in the division last season for possession in the Premier League, or average possession in the Premier League. That's gone up to 15th in the Premier League so far this season. It is worth saying that isn't a particularly big jump. It's only 2 places higher in the Premier League, still in the bottom 5 for average possession, but a 4.4% increase in how much possession we're having each game, from 41% to 45% as an average. So still not being able to really control games with the ball. We're not averaging above 50% or even really that close to 50%. We're generally getting less of the ball, but more than what we had previously. The biggest marker of stylistic change or difference from last season is more in the defensive approach of the side. So under David Moyes, we tended to sit deeper or sit in a mid to low block, invite opposition to come onto us, force the opposition wide, and then defend our box. Generally quite heavily reliant on guys like Kurt Zouma and Thomas Souček to clear the box, either through just being very good positionally, someone like Souček, or also very good in the air, which both of those players were for the vast majority of their time at West Ham. I'm thinking about Zouma when I say time at were, and Souček remains to be very, very impactful on aerials. And that translated to quite a high PPDA figure, and PPDA stands for passes per defensive action. It's a way that we can sort of get an assessment of how intensely teams press. It's not entirely perfect. It can be impacted quite significantly by game state. It can be impacted by situations where teams are intentionally going more direct in terms of their own style, which can misrepresent an opposition press as being particularly aggressive because they might be losing the ball by being inaccurate in their own directness from deeper positions on the pitch. But generally, it gives us a pretty decent idea of how intensely teams do press. And we have seen a 4.31 decrease in the PPDA numbers, and that takes us that's a quite big jump really from 18th in the Premier League last season to 10th, so bang average really in the Premier League for pressing this season, instead of being one of the teams that is far less intense than most other teams across the division. And then there are 2 other areas that we looked at to really establish changes in terms of how we want to create chances and how we want to progress play, how we want to progress through the thirds on the pitch. And those were how many, expressed as a percentage, how many passes of all of the passes that we attempt travel long. So how direct really are we? How quickly are we looking to progress the ball, and how many of those progressions are coming through big long diagonals or big balls forward into the front line? Not really a massive shift there between Moyes and Lopetegui so far. Just a 1.6% decrease in directness. So the 5th most direct team in the Premier League under Moyes last season, down to 8th most direct team under Lopetegui so far. And then in the final third, we just looked at crosses really and see how regularly we're crossing, and that's almost almost exactly the same, just a 0.2 decrease in crosses per 90. So, and that was 11th last season and 9th this season. So kind of same as we were, sort of in the middle of the division for the amount of times that we cross into the box. It's worth then also comparing that to kind of that gives us an idea of the stylistic shift. It's worth then comparing that to actually output based stuff. So what's actually changed in terms of, does that then mean that we're scoring more goals? Does that then mean that we're conceding more regularly? And there's a pretty massive jump here as well, and the biggest one here is on goals scored, where last season we were scoring far more than we are this season, and that's dropped by 0.44 per 90. We were the 8th best attacking team just on scoring goals last season. That's down to 15th so far this season, so scoring far less regularly. A big part of that is that we see that the shot distance, the average shot distance, has also dramatically worsened. So we've gone from being ranked 5th in the league for taking shots from very close to goal, down to 11th in the league. And then a smaller shift in the defensive metrics in the output side of things, where we see a 0.2 decrease in goals against, which really we'd like to see a much bigger change, especially if there's going to be a big knock-on effect on the amount of goals we're scoring. We were really poor defensively last season, so it was probably the most important area to address alongside all the stylistic shift stuff, was really to get us far better as a defensive unit and stop us conceding so many goals. Just a small change there, and then a big part of that as well will be that the distance has massively decreased in terms of the average shot distance that oppositions are recording against us. Last season, we ranked actually in the top 3 in the Premier League for forcing teams to shoot from far away from our goal, and that kind of is a bit natural when you think about the way that we defended. You pack in the box, and teams are often forced to shoot from the edge of the box. And then this season we're down to 9th, so the quality of the teams that we're facing, the quality of the shots that they were able to produce is much greater this season. And again, not massively surprising if you've watched lots of West Ham this season, where you're seeing there are situations where teams are breaking through and getting away, often on counter-attacks, where our defence can be quite exposed, and then they're able to generate much higher quality shooting opportunities. So it's kind of quite a weird thing to look at, because when you actually come to the overall big things that we often see people talking about in the analytics space, which is like XG difference, it's not massive difference there. There's a 0.18 increase in XG difference, which is good, but that only takes us from 16th in the Premier League last season to 15th, so not really much change on that side of things. And then in real terms output, there's been a 0.24 decrease in goal difference, and I think that's a lot to do with that shot quality that we're speaking about. So whilst we might be recording a bit more XG and facing a less XG, you're looking at facing less XG, but those chances are much better, so teams are putting them away more reliably. And whilst we might be getting a little bit more, those chances are a lot worse, so we're actually scoring less reliably from more XG. So you're actually seeing that the actual goals that are scored in games we're worse on so far this season under Lopetegui.
And a lot of that makes sense, right? When you think about the stated aims of changing the manager, a lot of things like possession were bound to change. So some of the stuff that we actively wanted to happen. But some of the other big changes that we saw in the data, and some of the other things that's jumped straight out at us, were some of the individuals and where the output was actually coming from.
Yeah, so one of the big changes in the team this season in terms of personnel on the pitch has been at right back. I would say one of the most significant. Vladimir so far recording a lot of minutes last season. I think he was in the top 3 in the squad last season for Premier League minutes, right near the top anyway. Played virtually the whole season. I think he even managed to get an apology from David Moyes beforehand for him having selected Thilo Kehrer ahead of him, who's now doing very well at Monaco in Liga. But so far, under Moyes was an incredibly reliable player, someone that always gave 100%. Physical output was sensational, amount of ground he always covered, and general sort of aggressiveness and attitude towards everything, A1, really, really brilliant on that side of things. Super reliable player for us. But in the summer, we spent a little bit of money on Aaron Wan-Bissaka from Manchester United, someone who's come in having done what I would say is probably an okay job at Man United over an extended period of time since moving there from Crystal Palace, after earning a lot of praise for his defensive work. It's a bit of a surprise of a transfer, certainly from our perspective, because we were expecting maybe a bit more of a attacking right back, or someone that was more used to being asked to operate very high up the pitch. It was an expectation, frankly, that Julen Lopetegui would use his right back extremely aggressively. It's something that happened pretty much everywhere he's been, that the right backs get very high up the pitch. But in fact, both fullbacks get very high up the pitch, but the right back for him was far more important at Sevilla. Jesus Navas generally being used in that role, and being a huge part of Sevilla's attack when he was most successful there. So a little bit of surprise that Wan-Bissaka was chosen, especially given that Sofal has over the years been quite good at producing output in the final third for us, getting assists, good balls into the box, etc., etc. Obviously, the one area that wouldn't have worked or hasn't worked so well for Sofal and kind of enforced some kind of change here was that we wanted to control the ball a bit better, and Sofal can generally be rushed a little bit too easily in possession or wants to do things too quickly, and sometimes that can mean that he gives the ball away probably in situations where he shouldn't give the ball away. So we did expect some kind of change. We just didn't really expect it to be Aaron Wan-Bissaka that was brought in, someone that was known more for his defensive qualities than his offensive qualities, and it's been something that's been spoken about a lot in the West Ham fan base already this season. We've spoken about it on this channel several times. It's been a key kind of issue that everyone's been able to spot, regardless of really how many times you've watched West Ham this season. Wan-Bissaka taking up, I think he's third in the for touches in the attacking third. So you can see just how important he is to this team and how many touches he's getting for us in that area. He is on 16.4% of the team's overall final third touches at the moment. That is a 2.3% increase on what Sofal was doing. Previously on the Moyes was operating more around 14%. But the big difference between these two guys is that Sofal, like I said, when he gets into the final third, has produced reliably at times for West Ham and turned his touches into 4.5% of the team's overall XA or non-penalty expected goals. So always creating shooting opportunities, or often creating shooting opportunities when he does get into those positions. It seems like a really low number, but actually when you're looking at it, generally you think the amount of touches that people get in the final third, you're not expecting all of those to turn into shots. And Sofal was just below 1% for turning his touches into shots in the final third, which is a really good rate actually, 0.8%. You'd want that maybe to be more around the 1.5% range if you really want someone that's very good as an attacking fullback, but 0.8 not too bad. And then Wan-Bissaka has massively cut that to ribbons really. He's 0.2% of his touches in the final third are leading to shots. He's contributing just 1.7% of the team's overall XA or non-penalty expected goals. So he's doing really about a third or less than a third or a quarter of what Sofal was offering as an attacking fullback for us. Which is a huge part of what we're trying to do as an attacking team, get the fullbacks high up the pitch and then look to those guys to create chances for us. It's a bit of a problem when such a key member of the attack, someone that's taking the third most touches in the attacking third, that's not including the penalty area, but in the third, the attacking third, not including that box zone, is not producing very much in terms of actual real-time attacking output.
Yeah, and it's equally concerning, and I think a lot of these things to keep in mind when we're talking about these two numbers is the fact that this is Moyes' last season, where a lot of people were very unhappy with the way we were playing, the results we were getting. This isn't Sofal in his first season and a half or whatever it was with us, where he was just absolutely ridiculous output machine. This is last year, where at the end of it we were all saying we very, very, very much need a new right back at the very least right now. And I think that's something to keep in mind when we talk about all these figures, because we're directly comparing last season of Moyes to this season with Lopetegui, and it kind of shines an extra light on certain bits like this, for example, when you are talking about those two. And one of the other big pieces we spoke about when we were going through the data, we're talking about marginal gains. And a lot of this is just, if we're being honest, the James Ward-Prowse effect.
It is. A lot of it is the James Ward-Prowse effect, or maybe the Aaron Cresswell effect before him. Look, I think whichever way you look at it, under Moyes, one thing that kind of unarguably West Ham did very well was focus on these areas like set pieces as situations where we could be better than other teams. Didn't really see us concede from set pieces very regularly at all. And we were always a threat at the other end from set pieces. And if you're going to be a side that doesn't establish control through having possession, these kind of things become very, very important. So when we were talking about Everton, we were saying that one of our biggest concerns about Everton this season is that they're not a team that take much control of games, but they have been conceding a few too many goals from set pieces this season. And it's not really something that you can afford to have. What I think is really important as part of this conversation is that when you do try and have more of the ball, it's not the case that you then need to lose your ability to focus on those marginal gains as well. You can be a good side on set pieces, a good side from and when I say set pieces, I don't just mean corners. I mean free kicks, I mean throw-ins, I mean any kind of dead ball situation where you can establish some kind of set move. It's not the case that by having more of the ball you're naturally going to be worse in those situations. Of course, player profiles do feed into this a little bit. So if you're a team that is supremely technical, extremely technical, then you may have fewer big physical presences to hit in the opposition box or to defend your own box. I wouldn't really say that's the case at West Ham. I think we've got quite a few big guys still in the squad, so I still think the targets are there. I think the biggest area of difference is that we don't really have someone who's very good at delivering the ball under Lopetegui this season. And also, I think the creativity associated to these dead ball situations is frankly naff. Like, I don't think there's been any real thought that's gone into this, or certainly not enough or not as much as there was previously. And again, this is a big area where the change is not small, the change is really major. If you're looking at the stats from last season, and this is a season where we recovered a bit from corners, but still had a few question marks. I think it was in the second half of the season, a few question marks over what's happened to West Ham's corners. Across the whole season, we ranked in third place for shot creating actions from dead ball situations in the Premier League. That's 2.39 shot creating actions per 90. So a pretty decent rate of creating shooting opportunities from dead ball situations. Bear in mind as well that we weren't at this time winning tons and tons and tons of set pieces, because we weren't in the final third that often to create dead ball situations from which we could create shots. I think we ranked in the bottom 5 in the Premier League for actually getting dead ball situations like corners and free kicks in promising areas. Obviously teams like Man City, Arsenal, etc., all at the top for those kind of metrics. And then in terms of output, we actually ranked second, only behind Arsenal for the number of goals we scored. So 11 goals last season from dead ball situations. And I like the way you put it. It is a little bit of kind of like James Ward-Prowse upside machine. Just, if you're going to fit someone in your team that's just going to add a bunch of goals, and maybe he isn't perfect in other areas of the game, but will definitely add goals, and goals are very important. Ward-Prowse is definitely one of those guys in the Premier League. Compare that to Lopetegui, where 2.39 shot creating actions last season, third place in the league, has dropped to 1.82 shot creating actions. Now, that might not seem huge, but the difference between 2.39 and 1.82 takes us from third in the Premier League to 14th in the Premier League. So from one of the best sides to one of the weaker sides in the division for creating shots from set piece situations. And again, bear in mind, we're actually getting more of them this season. So the efficiency numbers must have gone absolutely off the edge of a cliff for dead ball situations. And then we have just one goal from a dead ball scenario. You might be thinking, when was that? I also thought, when was that? When I was looking at this, Charlie also thought, when was that? And then we remembered, of course, that the classic Vladimir Sofal quick throw-in is what led to Danny Ings' last-minute equaliser at Fulham earlier this season, with Bowen getting in behind Anthony Robinson, cutting the ball back, and Ings being able to finish. So that technically is a goal from a dead ball situation, but hasn't obviously come from a corner or a free kick. We're yet to score from a corner or free kick this season, but that one goal leaves us joint 7th. That might seem good, but there are 10 teams who have scored one goal, so it's not particularly impressive at all. And it's a big area of concern from my point of view because of the number of wide attacks that this team is going for. So we don't really progress the ball through the centre of the pitch. We haven't really shifted dramatically when it comes to the directness. So there's still a lot of sort of long, direct focus play. A lot of that means that we're focusing play down the wide areas if we're winning balls. And actually, one of the differences is, I suppose, the success of the direct play has gone up quite a bit because we're not just tonking the ball at Antonio. We are playing more considered diagonals, maybe from someone like Kilman out to Aaron Wan-Bissaka. You're seeing a lot of balls like that. But it does naturally incentivize more wide attacks. Like we said, very little change in the crossing numbers, and that also then means that you're going to generate quite a high number of corner kicks, throw-ins in good positions in the final third. And we're not really making anything at all of all of those dead ball situations we're generating, which is a major concern from certainly from my side of things.
Massively so. You can always rely on those. Like you're saying, it's not something that has to be, because you're getting better in possession, maybe you're going to be worse off at corner kicks or whatever. They're completely separate things. And again, I think this is another situation, a bit like the Wan-Bissaka Sufao thing, where it's easy to forget that last season we weren't buzzing about corners, and the season before we weren't buzzing. This wasn't prime Moyes era where every opposition team would be like, West Ham are going to come, they're going to score from a corner, we're very scared of this. We were better than we were the season before, but we weren't still at that prime level. So to have such a huge...
We were a little bit right at the start, but apart from that...
yeah. But overall is what I'm saying. Like when you talk about the numbers in its totality, it wasn't that idea. And so to have such a huge drop-off from even that is massive. And I call it the James Ward-Prowse effect because that was one of the reasons he was playing so much. He was one of the... I can't remember exactly where he was on the list of minutes last season, but he was incredibly high.
In the top 5.
Very, very high. And a lot of that was because, you get a corner, you get a dead ball, whatever. Boy's going to put it in on a sixpence for someone, essentially. And that is something we have completely lost, and everyone knows it. We've all been speaking about it. And so I guess when we come to the conclusion of all of this, I think it was really interesting once we finished going through the figures and putting them together and actually looking at them. Because, like I said at the beginning, there was some stuff that we knew would have changed. For example, more possession, better PPDL or a decrease in PPDA, being a bit more active in the press and stuff like that. But then some of these more small surprise elements, for example, just how many touches Wan-Bissaka's getting in the final third and stuff like that, when you piece it all together, a lot of this season begins to make sense, especially when you look at, say, the previous videos we've been doing where we've been looking at the tactics of individual games and a lot of the repeated things that we've seen consistently over the season. Actually, when you start to look at the numbers, that all feeds into it and you start to gain a real, big picture of what's going wrong at West Ham.
Absolutely. I think all of these different issues come together to create a lot of this kind of general malaise that we're seeing. If I had to put my finger on what I think the sort of most alarming area is that from Lopetegui's point of view, what we discussed with the right back is kind of central to everything. If you're generating a front five unit that consists of both of the fullbacks, and neither of the fullbacks really get you much upside in the final third. I mean, Emerson is doing his best, but I think even his numbers are inflated quite significantly by the fact that he's been put on all of the free kick situations where you want to cross into the box. Emerson seems to be taking quite a lot of those. He's probably the second in the team for most set pieces this season, and Bowen has probably taken the most, and then Emerson is second, I think. Overall, so even his numbers, I think a lot of that will come from dead ball situations. Not that means that they're really good dead ball scenarios, and he's doing a really great job, but it will inflate what we see from his open play metrics. But yeah, beforehand you were looking at Kudus, Paquetá, Bowen, and Ward-Prowse really as the guys that were receiving the ball in advanced areas around the box, and you kind of know that with those four guys, they're all pretty good at creating something when they do get the ball in those areas. And then, guys like Emerson and so far were a little bit lower down. Whereas this season, if you're looking at the attacking third numbers, it is really Wan-Bissaka and Emerson beyond Bowen and Kudus, really. That is the unit that's getting the ball in those positions a lot of the time. That's not including Somerville because he's not really made his way consistently into the first team. He does record really good numbers in those areas. But if you're looking just at the first team guys, it's really Kudus, Bowen, Paquetá, so the three same players, but with Wan-Bissaka and Emerson just as important. And yeah, to have two players as part of that unit that are going to have to generate you a huge amount of upside in the attack that aren't doing it, and then also simultaneously are not great in terms of their reaction to transition, haven't really been a key part of our, counter press, the ability to kind of keep the ball in the opposition's final third, it is going to be a really big issue for Lopetegui. At team level, I think we've got a lot of good players. I'm just concerned about that area specifically of the squad, in terms of how Lopetegui is going to find any kind of fix in order to get his specific style, his specific approach to function at this football club.
Especially when it will seemingly remain that way, right? We are a team who are playing the same a lot of the time. We've seen that previously in those videos, which you may have seen previously on the channel. They're from our Q&A, which we do every week over on the Patreon, patreon.com/analyticsunited, link in the description below, where we've gone through matches and we've gone through tactics, and you see a lot of the similar themes happening, and it's easy for all of us to see when we look at it. But
can I just leave them with one number that I'm sure they'll enjoy?
Little cheeky bonus number. I'm down for that.
Just as we're chatting, I'm just like desperately scrolling through all the data and trying to find a good point to end on. We mentioned several times that Aaron Wan-Bissaka is third in the team for touches in the attacking third. That number is 161, and it is level with Mohamed Kudus in second place. So a kind of remarkable number of touches for a player that has created virtually nothing. He's on 0.4 combined XA and non-penalty expected goals. That's less than Max Kilman.
And he only really gets up there for corners,
which we said were rubbish.
Yeah, which, as previously stated, not great at the moment. Yeah. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. If you have enjoyed the video, make sure to like it and subscribe. As I said, patreon.com/analyticsunited. We do a lot more stuff like this. We have the 2 videos publicly on the channel every week, including some shorts and stuff, but there is so much more happening over there, which if you're interested in. The first 7 days is free, so if you want to see some of that wonderful, lovely content, then make sure to check it out. But apart from that, Jack, thank you very much, and we will see you after the international break. Bye.